Good morning. Good morning. Happy Thursday, Law Nerd. You know, on October 3rd, I asked what day he was, and he said October 3rd. I don't know about you. I had forgotten it was Mean Girls Day, but I'm all for it. We have lots to cover today. It has been a minute, it feels like, since we've gotten to stream, but we've got some cases we've been covering very closely that have hopefully some final resolution today. So lots of the judge being like, denied today. We need to talk about Alec Murdaugh again because the judge did, well, exactly what I said he was going to do. I love it when that happens. It's like, oh, this is what we said was going to happen, but we're going to read it for ourselves. So Alec Murdaugh got another loss in court for Alec Murdaugh. So we're going to talk about that. Then we need to talk about the judge's ruling in the Hannah Gutierrez case. We watched the oral arguments together. We went through all of the filings, and we're going to go through what Judge Summer decided, talk about why, how, and the rest of it. I know there is other news. I know there was other stuff going on in the world. These are the two cases I'm covering today. During Q&A, we will talk a little bit about upcoming scheduling and plans, but I also put all of that in the Law Nerd app for you, so I will keep you in the loop. So let's roll the intro. Let's get us going, and then we're going to cover those two things. We'll go to Q&A, and then we'll go from there. Also, I have cat glitter. It's just going to be one of those days. It's a Thursday that feels like a Tuesday that also feels kind of like a Wednesday, but I want it to be a Friday. So all in all, happy Mean Girls Day. Let's stream. Let's talk law. The federal court to Alec Murdaugh. You don't even go here. Let's do that.
Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not... Let's get into it.
All right, law nerds. A ton of you asked in the comments of literally everything I've done if we are going to cover new Diddy stuff. Here's where I'm at. I wanted to give you guys a heads up of here's where I'm at with that. Yes, and if breaking down the press conference would be helpful, I will break down the press conference for content for you next week. There are no new legal filings. I generally like to stick to covering what happens in court. A press conference is just a press conference. So with that, I don't know how much there is to help other than, hey, this press conference happened. There may or may not be filings. I want to see what the filings actually say, because until we have those, it really is just a lot of, well, we have talked to people and they say the thing happened. So with that, I will decide. I'm going to put up polls. I'm going to put up polls for the rest of it. So Alan said, what about the new 120 people lawsuit? None of those have been filed. It's just a press conference. There are no filings yet. We don't know if there will be 100 separate cases or 5 or 1. We do not know. So we can talk about it a little more in other content. I'm not going to go through it on stream today. We've got so much other stuff, but a press conference is a press conference. So when there are lawsuits, then we will cover the lawsuits. There are no lawsuits yet. So we will talk about that in other content. However, there is an appeal, and I think we're going to cover the appeal filings when we get those. I really do prefer to acknowledge that there was a press conference, but when there are filings, we will cover the filings. I think that's really how it is. Maybe we'll go into it in a quick bits, but a press conference is a press conference, and we will go into lawsuits when lawsuits are lawsuits. Does that help? When lawsuits are lawsuits, we will get into lawsuits. So we will get into it then. We have a lot of other stuff to I would really like to be done with Alec Murdaugh. Are you ready? Are you ready to be done with Alec Murdaugh? I really want to be done with it. And we're not done with Alec Murdaugh. Like, we're not all the way done with Alec Murdaugh. Like, we're not all the way done with Alec Murdaugh. So we're going to finish part of Alec Murdaugh today and case closed it. And then we are going to get into everything Judge Summer said. And then we'll just do Q&A and chat about everything coming up and what's going to be in the Lawnerd app, what the schedule and plan is for next week and the weeks after. There are trials coming up, but I also wanted to close this down. I really want to close out Murdaugh and be done. There's stuff going on in the Buster Murdaugh case. We will circle back to that soon. I think I will probably do a breakdown of what's going on in the Buster Murdaugh case when we break down the entire baby reindeer ruling. A lot of you indicated that you wanted more of a breakdown of the law, and we will do like a deeper dive into the law. I think it might be helpful. God, there is cat fuzz just all over my desk today. I think it might be helpful to do a breakdown of the court's ruling in the baby reindeer case, to review what the court is seeing with regard to defamation and what the court is looking at when looking at public figure versus not public figure, and what the court was looking at with the anti-slap. I think getting into the law of that might be helpful because there still are a lot of questions. And I know the interest right now is mostly in Diddy, but I also know the hardcore law nerds are like, I love that we do some deep dives into the law and the question of when can people tell their stories? When are we going to have issues with defamation is a really not just interesting question, but potentially impactful question. I lean towards wanting people to be able to tell their stories. So where is the boundary between you can tell your story and you can get sued? Like, that is where I think there's a lot more room for conversation on the baby reindeer case and then on the Buster Murdaugh case, because Buster is also suing Netflix and others with what about defamation by implication? And I think those questions are helpful even when there is other stuff happening in the news. But sometimes, like week after week after week after week of Diddy is just maybe not what we need. Collectively, it's okay to take a break, which is why the second there's a press conference, you're not seeing me fire up and going live. I'm much more likely to go live when we have big breaking news that happens in court. And that's really where I try to keep my coverage to, and maybe we'll just touch on it as we cover the appeal stuff and do it that way. So I wanted to bring you in with what I'm thinking and how I decide on what we're covering, because we need I think some variety. All of us miss some food court. I do too. Like, a food court is so needed. A food court is so needed. A food court is so needed. So it's balancing those things, balancing the interest versus balancing what else is going on in the law. So let's see. Brittany asked if I will cover the sheriff shooting the judge. Not yet, but down the road. It is definitely on my radar. Right now, there's not as many facts and a whole lot of speculation. So we will, I'm going to wait a little bit on that. And then as more comes out, we'll get back into it. But for now, I'm keeping an eye on it, but breaking news often isn't my jam. So yes, and it's going to wait just a little bit. Right now, there is so much speculation about that case that we're going to wait until we have a little bit more information before we cover it. So today, I told you what we're covering. My cat hair on is just, oh, my cat hair just not helping me today. What is going on? George was just like, what we're going to do is have cat glitter all over your desk, and it's going to just stick to your face. So that's what we're covering today. I wanted to go through how I think about things because I think it helps. So we're going to keep you up to date in the Lawnerd app. If you don't have the Lawnerd app, hi. We're going to keep you up to date in the Leonard app. That is where all of the updates live. Especially if I'm not updating elsewhere on social, which lately I have just not been, because A, tired, B, work. When I am like in mode with work stuff, I forget to post on social. Honestly, it's not my first thought. I'm focused. I have a very hard time being really present and focused, and also being like, oh, social media. I'm like, no, present and focused first, social media second. So it's like present and focused, Leonard app, then social media. So I will keep you up to date in the Leonard app. Let us get into Murdaugh first, then Reed, and then we will talk about it. I see a lot of you asking about Sarah Boone. We'll talk about it during Q&A because we're not covering Boone today. So we'll talk about all of that during Q&A, but I'm not going to get into Q&A now because then we'll never get into covering cases and I will just get distracted. Maybe we'll do a Q&A stream one of these days, but today is not the day. Today is a Murdaugh day. Are we ready for Murdaugh? I'm ready for Murdaugh. Are you ready for Murdaugh? You let me know. Murdaugh has been smacked down by the court. The judge was like, not today, Murdaugh. Let's do a quick road so far of which Murdaugh case we're talking about. I think that's the most helpful because it's like, which part of Murdaugh? Fair, because there's so much Murdaugh. We are talking about the Murdaugh federal sentence, not the Murdaugh appeal on the murder case. Murdaugh had multiple cases. The state level murder case for one, the federal fraud, et cetera, case was two. He also has state level fraud cases that he pled to. And there are some tax cases that are still floating. Or at least last I checked, were still floating. Could they have been resolved now? Maybe. But on the murder case, he got life plus life. On the federal theft from client fraud claims or fraud causes of action, he got 40 years. And the judge was like, so federal prosecutors, I see that you're asking for less than that. Nope. And sentenced him to more than what the federal prosecutors were asking for, which is rare to me. So it's interesting to see how this federal case came about. But again, the judge was just like, I'm sending a message. You're already in prison for life plus life. This is a message, not just to Murdaugh about what he did, but also a message to other attorneys in a position of trust that if they fuck around, they will in fact find out. The federal case was based on a plea deal. Remember, we read through the entire plea agreement together. I know it's so many cases. We read through the plea agreement together. And what did the plea agreement have in it that was super impactful to what's going on now? A waiver of appeal. I waive my right to appeal. And then what did Murdaugh do? Fucking appealed. He sure did. And the prosecutors came in and were like, adorbs. What you can't do is waive your right to appeal and then turn around and appeal. Even when you waive your right to appeal, there is a very narrow carve out that allows you to appeal in very limited circumstances. One of those circumstances is if the law changes. So if the thing you're doing is a crime and then later becomes like not a crime, you can appeal down the road saying, hey, you punished me for crime that's no longer a crime. Can we reconsider all of this? Things like that. Very narrow circumstances when you may appeal the law changing. You can't just appeal like, hey, so I don't like what you sentenced me to. That's not it. You can't withdraw your plea because you don't like what the judge is sentencing you to. This is different federal system by state by state. Sometimes in states, you have different options. A lot of times in states, there will be a plea with a plea agreement. And then the judge just imposes the sentence you agreed to. Plea agreement, judge sentence. That is not how the federal system works. The federal system is, all right, well, the judge is going to do what the judge is going to do. We agree that your sentencing range will be here, but we don't agree to what your sentence will be. The judge gets to decide. And that is very different in the federal system than the state system. It's wild to me. The judge is going to do what the judge is going to do. Okay. So when you plea, you really don't know what's going to happen. Murdaugh's like, I don't need to go to federal trial. Let's just plea. Murdaugh couldn't have really gone to a federal trial anyway. He admitted to all the financial crimes in the state level murder trial. They would just come in and be like, you admitted to all of this stuff. So what would you like to do at trial? Because you already admitted to everything on the stand in your state trial. So that would have been interesting. Sorry, my in-ears are clipped to the back of my shirt and they were starting to pull me. My ears are just being spicy today. Everything. So that's that is where we're at. Murdaugh pled. His plea included hey, you can't appeal. And then he was like, right, but bet I want to appeal. And this is the court's ruling on that appeal. We haven't gone over this yet together. This just came down October 1st. So we're out here being timely, covering things as they happened. Why is this in two different colors? Because we have the appellate court and we have the state level court. That is why. So we are covering this from Law 360. I appreciate Law 360's reporting and the fact that they attached the documents to their reporting. So it's just right there. It's so good. It's so good. This is the judge's order. Order! I kind of love it. We'll do it again. Bring the jury. Hold on.
Bring the jury.
Just because we're talking about Murdaugh, why not have a moment for Judge Newman, right? Bring the jury. Richard Alexander Murdaugh seeks to appeal the 480-month sentence imposed following his guilty plea to conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bank fraud in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1349, bank fraud in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1344, 5 counts of wire fraud in violation of 1343, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, 1349, and 14 counts of money laundering in violation of 1956 A1B1. The government moves to dismiss the appeal pursuant to the appeal waiver in Murdaugh's plea agreement. Appeal waiver. Appeal waiver. Murdaugh opposes the motion, arguing that his Eighth Amendment challenges to his sentence fall outside the scope of the waiver. Upon review of the record and the parties' submissions, we conclude that Murdaugh knowingly and voluntarily waived his right to appeal. We further conclude that Murdaugh, quote, has failed to demonstrate an acceptable reason why his appeal waiver should not be enforced under his Eighth Amendment claims. Accordingly, we grant the government's motion to dismiss the appeal. Boom, roasted. That's it. That is it. You waived your right to appeal. So you get what you get and you don't get upset. So the federal appellate court said there was no misunderstanding. You knew exactly what you were doing. You were advised by multiple lawyers, and also you are a lawyer. So if anyone understands, it's you. So that is it. I know the shortest order ever. Get out of here. This is literally the federal court being like, get out of here. We grant the government's motion to dismiss the appeal. It's not that they're denying the appeal. They are throwing out the entire thing. Just yeet. So we knew that's what was going to happen. But at least as to the federal case, we are done. I can't see Murdaugh's lawyers appealing this. It doesn't mean they won't, but why would you even bother? So his appeal was thrown out. So denied, yes, but the motion to yeet was granted. So the federal court, that part should be done, finally done, case closed, done. Should be done. The murder case is not done. And the murder case is not going to be done for a while. That is not uncommon in murder cases. The appeal with regard to the courthouse Becky stuff is going to go on for quite a while. And after the appeal for the courthouse Becky stuff is done, then there will be all the other levels of appeal for all the other stuff going on with the new trial. The courthouse Becky stuff has really sidetracked the rest of the appellate process. So that appellate process is going to happen. And then we're going to get into the other side of it. Remember, with Murdaugh's murder appeals, the courthouse Becky stuff, let me back up. The court allowed Murdaugh to pause his other appeals and follow the new trial. So the motion for new trial is happening. The appeal on the motion for new trial is happening. That is all separate than what you see in your regular appeals. So he hasn't even gotten to his regular appeal on the murder, like the judge allowed in this evidence and he shouldn't, the judge did this and he shouldn't. All of that part of the murder appeal hasn't even started yet because they allowed the appellate court allowed that to be paused until the motion for new trial is resolved. And the motion for new trial is going up on appeal. So until that round of appeals is done, we've got another round of appeals after it. So the murder case is going to be on appeal for quite a while if the new trial doesn't get granted. Of course, if the new trial gets granted, then that line of appeals will be cut off because a new trial will happen. Whatever happens after that new trial, then it will begin again. But with the federal case, we should be done. So Murdaugh's not done, but the federal prosecution of Murdaugh's done. Dude, you got your 40 years. Stop it. Go away. Oh, and then there's still all of the civil cases that are ongoing. Those are not done yet either. So I don't know where Murdaugh's paying for all of this, but the next thing that I imagine I'll be covering for Murdaugh, unless like Becky gets indicted, I mean, could happen. There's quite a lot of ethical complaints. Some of those things are crime adjacent enough that I'm like, So unless something happens with courthouse Becky, the next thing we should be covering for Murdaugh is all of the motion briefing on his appeal to the state Supreme Court with regard to the motion for no new trial and courthouse Becky. So for now, federal court, case closed. Case closed. Case closed. I'm rolling it because it needs to happen. And I'm ready for at least one of the Murdaugh. There are so many, like the folders of Murdaugh cases I have under like Murdaugh. It's so many cases. We needed a case closed. So it's a win for us. I'm calling it a win. It's a case closed. Goodbye, Alec. Just be done. Let this one lie. Alec needs to let this one just lay down and be done. Is he going to do that? Probably not. I mean, probably not. Probably not. Sandy in the chat asked, are you going to stream his retrial if he gets a new one? Oh, Sandy. Yes. It's like yes, asterisk. There is always a yes and, because you never know what's going on at the same time, but the intention will be to cover it. Look, when we start covering cases, we are generally not done with them until they are all the way done. So if Murdaugh gets a new trial, yeah, we're gonna definitely be hanging out to see what happens. Like, will Dick Harpootlian point weapons at the prosecution again? How much of the financial crimes will get in? Will Murdaugh testify again? Like, there's so much that we would want to cover after we had covered the case originally. So yes, we absolutely will be covering it with the asterisks of timing. So in one way or another, just like the case in Las Vegas, the Redden case, the guy who Supermaned over the judge's bench, we covered it like a week after it happened. But for most of you, I think you didn't watch it when it happened and waited and watched it with the Law Nerds. So we're like, yeah, we'll watch it when it happens. So one way or the other, one way or another. Yeah, we'll cover it. Again, there's always like a timing component to things because family life is dynamic. Kids' schedules are dynamic. We're going to get into that for next week at the end of covering these other cases today. But yeah, the life is dynamic. So one way or another, we will cover it. And that's why we have the Law Nerd app, so that we have a little bit of room to tell you guys how we're doing things, what, when, and why. All right. Are we ready to talk about Hannah Gutierrez? Are we ready? Are we ready? I'm ready. And then we'll just get to lots of Q&A. I'm ready to talk about Hannah. We've got 2 full rulings from the court. Both of them are well, longer than the Murdaugh one. So the first ruling is 16 pages. I want to go through line by line. I'm really interested. I did not preview it. I really wanted to do it with you guys. So let's talk about Hannah again. And then, well, it's not going to be case closed. Then we'll talk about what comes next. So Hannah Gutierrez Reed, through her lawyer Bowles, asked the court to reconsider a motion to dismiss and said, but Your Honor, you dismissed Baldwin. Can we get some of that dismissal too? Please? Can we just get a little of that dismissal? You dismissed Baldwin's, we want a dismissal. What I said at the beginning of this and continue to say is the standard is different. There is a whole world of room to talk about whether the standard for Brady violations during trial and post-trial should be the same or different. That is a conversation to have state by state, and that is a conversation to be had amongst the legal committees that take a look at how these things play out, if it's equitable, if it's not equitable, and where we are going to, where those things are going to be considered, because the standard in New Mexico is quite different. In other jurisdictions, it's a little closer. In New Mexico, it's a lot easier to get this type of a remedy that Baldwin got during trial than after trial. Is that equitable? That is a question for legislatures and legal committees and all of the lawyers that sit around and go, that's interesting. That's interesting. That's really interesting. But the judge has to follow the law as written by the legislatures. So this is the judge, I think, following the law as written by the legislatures. So we're going to go through it. Quick background. Oh God, there is no quick background. Carrie Morrissey, 52-page motion, blah, blah, blah. No, that part of that was in the Baldwin case. And these have gotten so intertwined. After trial, Bowles went to the court and said, look, there are discovery violations here that we didn't find out about until the Baldwin case, after Hannah's trial went forward, after Hannah got sentenced to prison. Bowles asked the court to do a number of things. 1, dismiss the case with prejudice, release Hannah from prison, done and done. 2, grant a new trial, release Hannah from prison pending the new trial. 3, that he was just like, and also, I would love you to dismiss this prosecutor, grant a new trial, give us a new prosecutor. These are all the remedies for the Brady violations. So we are going to look at the court's ruling. We heard the oral arguments. I had forgotten some of the Brady things that Bowles brought up. There was an entire videotape recorded or video recorded interview of Seth Kinney, the prop house master that never got turned over, which is bananas to me. Then there was the Teskey rounds, which I don't think were their most persuasive argument. There was also reports from the expert that weren't turned over. Then we also saw Bowles arguing that he would have done things differently in trial, kind of, and arguing that Carrie Morrissey lied to the court, even in talking about Erlinda Johnson. And then he forgot to attach Erlinda Johnson's affidavit to anything. And he's like, well, it's in the Baldwin case. It's like, right. That's right. That's not the case though. That's not your case though. So you can't do that. So let's get to the court's ruling. 16 pages. I really wonder if the court is going to bring up the fact that the Erlinda Johnson affidavit was not attached. The court might just ignore it because the court said I'm striking that part of the argument. This does not mean that Hannah cannot still appeal. This doesn't cut off the route to appeal. So will there still be an appeal in this case? Yes. This is a jumping off point. You go to the state court first, and the state court's like, no, we're not doing that. And then it moves up. This is the court's order from September 30th. It's been, as I said, it's been a busy week. Order denying defendant Hannah Gutierrez Reed's expedited motion for new trial or for dismissal for discovery violations and under the court's inherent power. So 2 things. They're asking for a dismissal 2 ways. Procedural summary. The court's going to do this better than I did. Let's see. Let's make this a little bit bigger. On January 31st, 2023, the state filed a criminal information against defendant Hannah Gutierrez. In addition to other preceding amended charging documents. Oh, preceding. I read that wrong. The state filed a 3rd amended criminal information on June 22nd, 2023. The 3rd amended criminal information became the operative charging document. Through this operative charging document, the state charged defendant with the following counts. Count 1, involuntary manslaughter. Alternative count 1 is the alternative theory of invol. And count 2, tampering with evidence. Following months of robust motion practice on February 21st, 2024, the court impaneled a petite jury. Grand jury versus petite jury is the trial jury. So the grand jury sits and brings down an indictment or investigates and indicts or not indicts. The petite jury, the cutesy, the demure jury. No, the petite jury is the trial level jury that hands down guilt or innocence or guilt or not guilt. On March 6th, the jury returned 2 general verdicts. As to count 1, involuntary manslaughter, the jury found the defendant guilty. As to count 2, tampering with evidence, the jury found the defendant not guilty. It made a lot of sense to me how the jury got there. Still does. On July 16th, defendant filed her expedited motion in response. On July 31st, the state filed its response to defendant's motion for new trial. Thereafter, defendant filed her reply for her expedited motion for new trial or for dismissal. On September 26th, this court entertained oral arguments. I mean, the court, I don't think was entertained. The court allowed the attorneys to be heard. The court was like, if I must with you all. On September 26th, the court heard oral arguments on the defendant's motion. After considering argument, the court reserved ruling on defendant's motion. The court now enters its written ruling on defendant's motion. Ruling and analysis. Overview of pertinent authority. So the court is going to go through all of their steps for how we are going to get to the decision the court makes. So again, for any of you that do legal writing, issue, rule, right? So the court is going through, that was the issue. Now, what is the rule? Issue and procedure and rule. Overview of pertinent authority. Defendant's expedited motion implicates 3 separate analyses developed in case law. This is so law school exam, like this question. It's like we need to do 3 different prongs of analysis to get to the thing. And this is, this very much shows when the court was asking for oral argument and when it was asking for certain parts of it, because even though it seems simple, none of this is really simple because there are multiple prongs of analysis that have to happen. So the court goes on to summarize case law from New Mexico and other jurisdictions demonstrates that a clear distinction exists between suppression of evidence, failure to preserve evidence, and failure to gather evidence in the first instance during a criminal investigation. So where are we? Cumulus Cloud said in Super Chat that the court endured arguments. That's exactly what it was. The court did not entertain shit. The court was like, the horrors persist, but so do I. That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it was. The court must analyze certain claims under a Brady analysis and under the standard applicable to motions for new trial based on newly discovered evidence. So the court is orienting everyone to, this is what I'm considering: Brady analysis and newly discovered evidence. The district court analyzes a Brady claim differently from a motion for new trial based on newly discovered evidence. So 2 different things. I mean, agreed, Chad. I don't think the court was entertained. I think we were entertained. It was very spicy, right? In addition to another claim by defendant, wait, no, I read that awkwardly. In addition, another claim by defendant may implicate the 2-part test in State v. Ware concerning evidence uncontrolled by police. So those are the 3 prongs. The potential Brady issue, and the court said no. The prosecutor said, yes, this wasn't turned over. So the Brady claim, newly discovered evidence, and then not gathered evidence. The Teskey rounds count as the not gathered evidence. So we've got three things. The not gathered evidence would be the Teskey rounds. The newly discovered evidence would be the Haig report and the video interview, but yeah, and the interview with Teskey when he dropped things off, et cetera, et cetera. And then is any of that Brady? So you've got kind of the three different prongs there. The court goes on to say in New Mexico, an assertion of Brady violation is an allegation of prosecutorial misconduct. In order to establish a Brady violation, the defendant must show that 1, the prosecution suppressed evidence, 2, the evidence was favorable to the accused, 3, the evidence was material to the defense. The defendant carries the burden of establishing a Brady violation. Appellate courts review a trial court's ruling on prosecutorial misconduct for abuse of discretion. That reminder is very much if you're going to appeal this, abuse of discretion is a very high standard. The appellate court defaults often and generally to what the trial court did. The belief behind that being the trial court's really in the best position to evaluate this as it's going on because they have all of the context, they have covered all of the case, etc. So abuse of discretion is a high standard with regard to evaluating this on appeal. The first element requires proof that the prosecution suppressed or withheld evidence in question. It does not require a finding of bad faith or other culpable state of mind on part of the prosecutor. So when we're talking about standards, I love how this court writes, but the prosecution suppressed evidence. Yep. The prosecutor said in oral argument that evidence was not turned over and suppressed. So the first prong isn't going to be hard to meet. Getting to whether the evidence was favorable and the evidence was material is going to be different. The second Brady element is whether the suppressed evidence was favorable to the accused, either as impeachment or exculpatory evidence. And then the court says with respect to the third Brady evidence or third Brady element, evidence is material only if there is a reasonable probability that had the evidence been disclosed to the defense, the result of the proceeding would have been different. This is the element that is different when we are dealing with in trial versus out of trial. So when we're dealing with the materiality in trial, part of the materiality was, would you have done something different? Not would the result have been different. There's no result yet. And in that case, you saw Baldwin's lawyers arguing, hey, we would have opened differently. We would have planned our trial differently. We would have planned our witnesses differently. We would have done things differently. For Hannah, it's going to look at, could the jury have come back differently? And that is a very different analysis. And for Hannah, with the amount of information that the jury took in from Hannah's own police interviews, that I think that element is the hardest one for Hannah to overcome. And the court, I wonder if agrees. We're going to see as we keep going. The court said evaluating material under Brady requires us to look at the entire trial to determine whether the defendant's conviction was obtained by violating due process, whether his or her trial was tainted with fundamental unfairness because certain evidence was not disclosed to the defense. Under New Mexico's application of Brady, while post-trial discovery of evidence under Brady requires a reasonable probability that the result of the proceeding would have been different, discovery of evidence during trial requires an evaluation of whether the late tender has impeded the effective use of the evidence in such a way that impacts the fundamental fairness of the proceedings. That recitation of the law is why we are at two very different places. Hopefully that's not a distinction without a difference. Chat, you let me know. This is the divide between in trial versus after trial. So that is where I have said all along that this is going to be very difficult for Hannah. It's much easier for defense attorneys to argue, I would have used this differently. I would have opened differently. I would have cross-examined a witness differently. I would have done all of this differently. Much easier to argue fundamental fairness than to argue the result of the trial would have been different. No matter what you show in Hannah's case, I think there is a strong argument to say, right, but Hannah's words. Hannah said, I should have checked more. Hannah said, I didn't do this. So when you look at Hannah's words, it's not, is anything that we saw going to change the way a jury saw this case? Or is it something that impacted the fundamental fairness? Maybe it did, but this was discovered after trial, and that's not the standard that applies. So when we talk about the split of standard, this is the split that we're discussing. So hopefully that makes sense. A motion for new trial, footnote 1, filed under Rule 5-614 on the basis of newly discovered evidence must satisfy 6 elements. So the court has moved into, here's our first level of elements. This is the Brady. So those are, 1, 2, 3 on Brady and the definition of them. Because in law, you can't just have elements. You must have definitions of elements. So Brady, 1, 2, 3, and then we defined 1, 2, 3. Now we're moving on for motion for new trial, newly discovered elements, 6 requirements. 1, the element will probably change the result if a new trial is granted. Again, stuck, right? 2, it must have been discovered since the trial, not during the trial, after the trial. 3, it could not have been discovered before the trial by the exercise of due diligence. That's going to be met because the prosecution said, no, we don't have anything more, and we haven't turned it over. 4, it must be material, and we'll get to the definition of materiality. 5, it must not be merely cumulative. So it can't be, yes, it's the exact same statement as Seth Kinney. If it's the exact same statement of Seth Kinney, then that's different than if this is entirely new and it's on video. 6, it must not be merely impeaching or contradictory. And the court focused on this, and some of the arguments focused on this. Is the bringing in the new evidence just to impeach? During trial, that matters. But when we're looking at after discovered evidence, it's got to be more than just that. And so then the court is going to go through and define each of those. Motions for new trial, quote, are not favored. The defendant bears the burden of establishing each of the requirements set forth above for the grant of motion for new trial. The grant of a new trial is not automatic. Rather, the defendant must prove that the newly discovered evidence meets the following requirements. In State v. Ware, the New Mexico Supreme Court adopted a 2-prong test for deciding whether the sanction for the state when police failed to gather evidence from a crime scene. This is the 3rd prong. So, Brady, after discovered evidence, police failed to gather evidence. Prong 3 also has prongs. So we're like A, part 1, 2, 3, B, part 1 through 6, and C, part 1 through, I think, 3 is what the court said. I like the way the court has lined out all of the rules here, all to do the analysis. The defense didn't make this as clear in their filings at all. This is my preferred legal writing. But this is also how my brain works. Hey, Your Honor, here's all of these elements. Let me tell you about them. And the court has done that, I think, in a very, very clear and concise manner. So, let's see. In State v. Ware, the New Mexico Supreme Court adopted a 2-prong test, so C prong 1 and 2, for deciding whether to sanction the state when police fail to gather evidence from the crime scene. Which is interesting because here it's not really from the crime scene. It's from somebody who wasn't even a witness. It was the Tuskegee rounds are an odd circumstance. First, as a threshold matter, the evidence that the state failed to gather from the crime scene must be material to the defendant's defense. Second, if the evidence is material to the defense, then the conduct of the investigating officers is considered. Is it material? And is it material is a huge question here too. I don't know if the court's going to find any of this material. The Tuskegee rounds may be less than the interviews. So let's go to the court's analysis, shall we? Defendant requests a new trial or dismissal on the basis of 3 purported discovery violations. Let's go to the footnote 1. Let's go to the footnote. We got to clear the voice. The voice is getting cranky today. I don't know why. It's not like I've been talking. It's just cranky. Defendant additionally refers to other materials comprising another possible 900 or so pages of material related to the state's witness Brian Carpenter and Haig that was not disclosed to undersigned counsel. Expedited motion at 13. Goes on to say, however, oh dear. However, defendant does not explain within the context of the case law concerning Brady, Rule 5-614 or other pertinent authority, why these materials justify dismissal or a new trial. Therefore, the court does not analyze defendant's claims of error vis-a-vis said material. Oh, the court does not love Bowles. Look at the case law the court chose to cite. This is a choice, right? This is the court saying to Bowles, yeah, but no. The fucking shade. The fucking shade. Oh, we will not review unclear arguments or guess at what his arguments might be. Your Honor. Your Honor. Look, the court putting that as the citation, that was not mandatory. That was not needed. But the court is dropping other courts' words into this, letting Bowles know exactly how she feels. Judge Summer is like, I'm not guessing. She didn't do her work. How can I possibly do mine? Like, the clueless of it all. We will not review unclear arguments or guess at what his arguments might be. That right there is judicial shade. In the choice of what the court chose to cite. Oh, Judge Summers, brilliant. I'll take away your coffee and I'm not guessing at your argument. And what Judge Summers is saying to Bowles is, you can't just drop, this is gold is in the footnotes. You can't just drop but Your Honor, there's like 900-ish pages that they didn't give to me. We get a new trial. I want a new trial now, mommy. Like, no. Why does it matter? What are in the 900 pages? Why does that mean anything to anything? So you can't just blanket statement things and not tie it together. And the judge, again, the magic lives in the footnotes. The judge is just dropping in. If you don't argue it and if you don't break it down, I don't give a shit. I'm not going to guess at what you're trying to tell me. Tell me or don't. And that is the point of legal writing. And I appreciate, again, for me, I love a bit of shade. You know me. We love a bit of shade. I didn't appreciate it as much when I was a research attorney. When I was sitting and reading these kinds of motions for judges, I was looking for a reason to yeet most of the time. I was looking for the clearest reason to get rid of something and then going through the analysis. So first it's like, these are all the reasons this fails. And then this is the legal analysis. So that's how I approached every single thing that came across my desk. And there were times I'm like, oh, shut the fuck up. Like, stop whining. I'm reading 10 motions today. And what I don't need is this attorney whining at me again. Like, there were times where you're just exhausted and you're like, stop it. I am much more amused by it now, less amused by it then. And it really depends on the judge. Sometimes the judge wants the tea. Judge in Idaho, all the tea. Wanted all the tea. Wanted to talk about the Magna Carta and the founding of Idaho ad nauseum. Other judges are like, get to the point. I am more of a get to the point, legal writing kind of a girl. Look, elements, argument, what are we doing? And the Judge Summers had it. We will not review unclear arguments. Me, when I go through the comment section. I don't. I mostly just talk to you guys in the Lawnerd app. Let's be perfectly honest. Defendant reviews a new trial or dismissal on the basis of 3 purported discovery violations. We will not review unclear arguments. First, defendant asserts that the state suppressed an August 31st, 2023 supplemental report by Lucian Haig concerning the functionality of the firearm involved in the incident. Second, the defendant claims that the state failed to disclose an interview with state's witness, Seth Kinney. Yeah, they didn't disclose that. Facts. Third, defendant claims that the state failed to receive, defendant claims she failed to receive a supplemental report and lapel video recording concerning the collection by Santa Fe County Sheriffs of ammunition by Mr. Troy Teskey. Facts. She didn't get it. Okay, so the court is starting with the expert's supplemental report and then going in order. Applying pertinent case law and other authority, the court concludes that the late disclosure of the expert supplemental report does not justify dismissal or new trial. The court didn't say it wasn't not turned over. The court says its late discovery is not enough to warrant a dismissal or new trial. The court applies the Brady analysis and reviews whether defendant has satisfied the Volpetto requirements. That is citing case law, hence the italices. With respect to the first Brady element, the court finds the defendant has established that the state suppressed the report. State didn't turn it over, and the state concedes that it didn't turn it over. Second Brady element, the court finds defendant has established the expert's report is favorable to defendant. So element 1, yes, the defense met. Element 2, yes, the defense met. But this is all. The defense has to meet all of them. Specifically, the expert supplemental report may have been used to impeach Haig's confirmation that other than the FBI testing breaking those components, he didn't see any other evidence of modification or damage. The court goes on to say it seems unlikely, although it cannot be excluded that these tool marks were the result of damage incurred during the FBI's impact testing. Yes, yes.
The FBI!
Yes, yes. Where they beat the cock notch of the gun with a mallet. Yes, yes, yes. And damaged it. Damage incurred during the FBI's impact testing because the axis of these striae is not aligned with the direction that the hammer would have engaged and applied pressure to the sear. Nonetheless, the court finds that the defendant failed to establish that the supplemental report is material. Okay. The defendant contends that had she possessed the expert supplemental report, she would have had sufficient evidentiary basis from which to argue that unexplained alterations of the firearm caused it to fire without anyone pulling the trigger, an unforeseeable intervening cause that rendered her conduct not legally responsible for Miss Hutchins' tragic death. Again, I don't agree with that defense argument. You guys know I don't agree with that defense argument. Had she checked the bullets, an unintended discharge of the weapon doesn't cause this death. And her job was to check the guns. So this is much different than the position Baldwin's in, right? So they go on to say the court goes on to say, however, the expert's supplemental report does not stand for the proposition the defense asserts. I agree with the court. Rather, the expert's supplemental report provides, quote, while the tool marks observed on the working surface and front surface of the gun trigger sear do not appear to be original manufacturing marks or use and abuse tool marks based on the striation's irregular orientation. These tool marks are also unlikely to have any bearing on the operation of the revolver at the time of the incident based on the FBI's trigger pull data. An FBI photograph of the hammer at full cock and substantial test firing of the revolver conducted by the FBI prior to the damage of the trigger sear and hammer. So the defense cherry-picked what they wanted to cite from that report. Right. And the court's like, well, there's more context to it. And with more context to it, it shows that at the initial firing, the gun was not misfiring. And yes, chat, we're back to full cock. All of it, not half, not quarter, but full. So the court's like, no, I don't agree either. The court says further, the expert supplemental report is in accordance with the trial testimony. Right, it's not different. Wherein the expert maintained the position that modifications present on the firearm likely had no bearing on the operation of the firearm at the time of the incident. Right, it wasn't until that wouldn't impact the operation of the weapon. The operation of the weapon was fine when the FBI got it and started
The FBI!
doing their initial testing. It wasn't until they started beating the thing with a mallet that the operation of it became a problem. And they didn't whack on it with a mallet until Baldwin went on to that interview with George Stephanopoulos saying the gun just went off. And then the FBI is like, bet. They got a gun and a mallet. And they started being like, let's see if we can make that happen. And then they went, oh, no, we can't. And then they broke the weapon doing that destructive testing. But when their initial firing, I think they fired 12 rounds or more than 12 rounds. And it fired the way it was supposed to fire. So I appreciate how thoroughly the court's going through this. The court is arguing this better than Carrie Morrissey did. Because Carrie Morrissey also stomped her foot. Like, Bowles started stomping his foot and Carrie Morrissey started stomping his foot back. And then the court was like, okay, here's the linear legal analysis of this. Stop pissing at one another and stomping your feet. So the testimony at trial was that there was no bearing on the firing of the weapon at the time Baldwin had it in his hand. Bowles, and this is from trial testimony, Bowles, did you also say that you did not find any damage to the weapon that would have prevented it from firing as designed? And I'm talking about not after the FBI, but prior. Is that your conclusion? Objection compound. Mr. Haig, yes, if the hammer were replaced and the trigger replaced and the bolt, it was a perfectly functioning, authentic replica of a classic firearm. Morrissey, based on everything that you reviewed and also the examination and the firing of this gun that you yourself participated in, have you seen any evidence that the full cock hammer notch was filed or modified to allow faster shooting? Haig, no. Did anyone modify the cock notch? No? Great. We'll giggle more later. This whole trial with the cocking and the decocking and the notching of it all. The court goes on to say, because Haig maintained the position that the modifications present on the firearm likely had no bearing on the operation of the firearm at the time of the incident, and because the supplemental report does not contradict this position, defendant's argument that the supplemental report could have impacted the jury's calculus of proximate cause under UG 14-251 is not persuasive. It's a no for me, dog, is what the court is saying. Thus, there is a lack of reasonable probability that had the defendant possessed the report, the result of the trial would have been different. So the court said, this is the testimony. This is the report, and it's not going to change things. Therefore, the defendant has failed to establish the state's late disclosure of the expert report constitutes a Brady violation. So there you go. Yes, it is late discovered. Yes, it was not turned over. But no, at this point, it is not a Brady violation because. Going on. The court says similarly with the Volpato requirements pertinent to Rule 5-614, the court finds under the reasoning set forth above, the defendant has failed to establish the supplemental report A will probably change the result of the jury's verdict if a new trial is granted, B is material, and C is not merely impeaching or contradictory. Therefore, assuming arguendo, we love an arguendo. Thank you, Your Honor. The satisfaction of other requirements, defendant cannot establish all the Volpato requirements necessary. What the court means by that is, I am not evaluating all 6 elements, but we're going to assume for the sake of argument that the other 3 elements are met. Even if the other 3 elements are met, and we're not establishing whether they are or are not, but even if they were, these 3 are not met, so we're done. So we don't get there. So the court is going through this methodically, and I appreciate it. Interview of Seth Kinney. Applying pertinent case law and authority, the court concludes that the late disclosure of the interview of Seth Kinney does not justify dismissal or new trial. The court applies the Brady analysis and reviews whether the defendant has satisfied the Volpato requirements. As to the first Brady element, the court finds that the state suppressed the recording of the undated interview. Notably, the state does not dispute that it failed to disclose this material until sometime in April 2024 after the defendant's trial. Yeah, the court said, yeah, we did do that. The court didn't really argue that they failed to turn over evidence. They argued that it was not Brady based on these other things. As to the second Brady element, the court assumes, but does not decide, that portions of the undisclosed interview may have been used for impeachment purposes during defendant's trial. That is to say, the court finds defendant has not sufficiently articulated, that's Bowles, how the undisclosed interview impeaches Kinney's trial testimony or exculpates defendant from the crime charged. And the court cites it again. We will not review unclear arguments or guess at what his arguments might be. Oop. The court's like, no, we don't know what you're saying. You did not articulate. This is the court to the defense. You did not articulate clearly how what was in the new Kinney interview would have been used by you at trial. And the problem is, I don't think Bowles knows. And if Bowles does not know, then he can't articulate it clearly to the court. And the court has thrown shade at both of these attorneys and said, if you can't articulate this, I'm not going to make it up for you. Oh boy. The court says nevertheless, or nonetheless, for the sake of analysis, the court assumes that defendant would have been able to establish some impeachment value of the undisclosed interview that she had she fully articulated and demonstrated that portions of the undisclosed interview contradicted trial testimony. So the court is giving it to them. They're giving them a bye. Hey, I'm going to assume you would have been able to show this had you argued this well. So the court is not going to ding them on that element because there are stronger elements the court is going to use to articulate that this doesn't rise to the level of Brady post-trial. As to the third Brady element, the court finds that defendant failed to establish that the undisclosed interview is material. Defendant has not established that there is a reasonable probability that had the evidence been available to defendant, the evidence would have produced a different verdict. Bowles did not argue this well. How does the Seth Kinney newly discovered interview change the verdict? The court says when viewing the suppressed evidence, significance in relation to the record as a whole, the undisclosed interview could not have been taken to put the whole case in such a different light as to undermine the confidence in the verdict. And then cites case law saying to make the materiality determination, we view the suppressed evidence significance in relation to the record as a whole. The suppressed evidence is considered material only if it could reasonably be taken to put the entire case in such a different light as to undermine confidence in the verdict. The court provides two illustrative examples. First, defendant emphasizes most critically, Mr. Kinney said he received 325 rounds. No. I don't know if she means 325 rounds or 325 rounds. Are we talking caliber or number? But the fact that there's not a period in front of it, I'm not going to assume it. That was my internet, not yours. Apologies. That was annoying. Let us continue with, hopefully without my internet being dumb. Let's see. My browser being distracting? I don't know why it's being distracting, but it is. There we go. That is it's much cleaner presentation. So let's see. He received 325 rounds from Thel Reed. Mr. Kinney also represented in the Friday, July 12th, 2024 hearing that he brought back 50 to 100 rounds with him to New Mexico. Keep reading, Emily. And no explanation as to where they went. However, information concerning Kinney's receipt of the rounds from Thel and eventual transportation of those rounds to New Mexico was adduced at defendant's jury trial on March 4th through Kinney's testimony. So the court is saying, yes, but even though it was in that interview, it's not new though. Second, defendant proffers statements by Mr. Kinney concerning a need for Rust management to give greater support to defendant in her roles on Rust. Nevertheless, the court says nonetheless. I always use nevertheless. So I am going to misstate that every single time I see those letters together. It is apologies. This court uses nonetheless. Nevertheless is Emily's brain not being able to read. Let's watch the dyslexia work in real time where my brain fills in the gaps on words all the time. And it doesn't always fill in the gap with the right word, but we get there nonetheless in real time. For any of you watching me for the very first time, yes, I am ADHD and dyslexic, among other neurospicy quirks. I always talk about them because A, I hope it helps normalize them, but B, to also explain what brains do in case you see your brain doing that and you're like, why does my brain do that? Yeah. Your brain learns early that if you struggle in one thing, your brain can shortcut it by just filling stuff in. It doesn't always fill it in properly, which makes test taking a bitch when the words matter so much. This is why test taking and extra time in test taking. If people are like, what does extra time mean when you're like ADHD and have other neurospiciness? Well, for me, it was having to reread things like with a ruler and slow them down so my brain doesn't fill in information that's not the information, because it absolutely is a challenge. And so even though the brain works fast, sometimes you have to fight to slow it down so you don't miss things and you don't skip over things and your brain does not fill things in that are not helpful. I always hated it when people like question accommodations with extra time. They're like, but you finished in time. It's like, no. That's not, okay, we're not going to get into why that's not the thing. But I always find that it helps. So my brain sometimes makes a connection that aren't there. I figure we just talk about it. And this one apparently is going to last for this entire motion. Just all of it. Also, different fonts help. And I think the reason different fonts help is because it makes your brain see what's there and not just fill stuff in. It's also why I tend to invert things, because white background, black text is very difficult for me to read. So I need darker background, lighter text, because my brain, I learned this when I did Erlen, and then I swear we're going to come back to this motion, but my brain focuses more heavily on the space between the letters and not the actual letters, which is why like the ADHD and dyslexia weighted fonts are helpful. But I do so much better with darker background because the white is over prevalent to me. And so the space between the letters jumps out and then things move. My Erlen lenses help with that. But if I can tint the browser, I need to start doing that. If I can tint the browser, it is more helpful. So darker background, not white. And you will notice that when I do things, even like our swoop, they don't flash white. In the app, there is very little white and there's a dark mode option. Yes. So, but I need to put a browser extension on this so I can do that. Anyway, that's for later because all dark mode all the time. Like all dark mode all the time. I'm so excited. Oh, members, I forgot. I was going to show you how I've set up my new phone with all dark mode, everything. I keep meaning to do that. Team Baker was like executive retreating and dancing to Hosier and Dave Matthews in the Rain. So I completely blanked on doing it, but I will. So let us continue through the reading of the words as best that we can. And this is why I lose my shit when people single space stuff. I'm like, stop it. Okay. Nonetheless, testimonial evidence concerning a lack of employer support was introduced through Mr. Lorenzo Montoya. My name is Inigo Montoya of the New Mexico Occupational Health and Safety Bureau. I liked Mr. Montoya. He was very direct and concise. He was like Mr. Montoya was very clear, just super clear. I was surprised the court allowed it in, but I was glad the court allowed it in because I thought it needed to come up. But yes. Mr. Montoya's testimony established a government agency's conclusion that Rust Management shared blame for the incident due in part to lack of adequate time afforded by Rust Management for defendant to perform her duties. This is much more weighted in the civil case. So those rulings by or determinations by OSHA will come up much more in these civil matters that are still going on. In addition, defendant largely fails to address the state's comprehensive arguments. Again, the court is like, yeah, no, Mr. Bowles, you didn't address it. I was so distracted by Carrie's whining that I didn't even see some of the state's arguments in this. It was definitely a blind spot for me because it was buried within all of the other foot stomping and rehashing. And it was very difficult for me to parse through arguments from the state. Even in the oral arguments, I thought Bowles made some good arguments, but there were times when I was like, I am trying so hard to focus on what Carrie's saying, but it was buried under Carrie's own tone of annoyance and derision. And that was hard for me to listen to at times. So anyway, let us continue. Defendant largely fails to address the state's comprehensive arguments concerning how information from the undisclosed interview was cumulative and consistent with disclosed text messages. So even though we know the court is annoyed with Carrie Morrissey, the court still said the state pointed out that this is all cumulative and the defense did not rebut it at all. So the state did not, or the defendant did not rebut that everything Kinney said was cumulative to everything else that had been disclosed. So there's that. All right. Ultimately, the proffered statements by Angel Pie, thank you. I'm going to grab that. I appreciate it. And that was a suggestion on a plugin. I have to remember to open things in Chrome, not Firefox, because that. Let's see. Hence, the defendant has not established that the evidence undermines confidence in the verdict when considering the significance of the evidence in relation to the record as a whole. So, I jumped lines. Apologies. I jumped like a whole paragraph. Ultimately, the proffered statements by Mr. Kinney made within the undisclosed interview reflected information available to defendant through other means, were already addressed by Mr. Kinney at trial, or bore on issues addressed by other witnesses during the course of defendant's trial. Hence, defendant has not established that this evidence undermines confidence in the verdict when considering the significance of this evidence in relation to the record as a whole. The defendant did not argue how it was new or novel and not simply cumulative. Similarly, with response to the Volpato requirements pertinent to Rule 5-614, the court finds under the reasoning set forth above that defendant has failed to establish the interview of Mr. Kinney, 1, will probably change the result of the jury's verdict if a new trial is granted. B is material, C is not merely cumulative, and D is not merely impeaching or contradictory. Therefore, assuming arguendo, the other requirements are met. Those 4 are not. Therefore, on this prong, that fails. So we've now gotten through 2 of 3. Let's look at the Teskey ammo. And the court is like, negative, negative, negative. Karen in the chat said it was his best chance. I also think the Seth Kinney interview was probably their strongest chance. Really do. The Teskey supplied ammo was their weakest argument. I'm not surprised it's third. Let's continue. Applying pertinent case law and other authority, the court concludes that the late disclosure of materials related to ammo supply by Teskey does not warrant a dismissal or a new trial. So we're going to do the Brady analysis, then the Volpato requirements, and also considers the test outlined in Ware. So the court is applying all 3 of the elements. As to the first Brady element, the court finds that the state did not suppress the Teskey supplied ammo vis-a-vis defendant Gutierrez. Rather, Troy Teskey and the ammunition in his possession were available to defendant, and yet defendant opted not to call Teskey as a witness or seek to introduce it at trial. That's what I said. That's what we all said. All of us at the beginning of all of this said, this is why this is the weakest argument. You had it in your grasp and you chose to do nothing with it. That is not on the state. As to Hannah, a very big problem as to Baldwin. Oh, Angel Pie said Dark Reader is also available for Firefox. Hold on. Emily, are you going to gallop into doing that right now? Yes. Because now I want to know. Now I am curious. Let's see if we can do it. It looks like we can. Ooh, I'm very excited. Let's try this right now and see if it will do. Oh my God. The Dark Reader site has lots of things on it that I have to make decisions to do. So that's going to be tough. I'm not going to make decisions at the moment. Let me see if it is. Well, it's there. Let's see if we can turn it on. I don't know if it downloaded. And I cannot restart. Give me 1 second. And we're going to have to do this later. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm going to need to do this later because it will not do it right now. But I've got it pulled up so I can do it later. Thank you, chat. Next stream, we will be ready to roll. I do love, though, that StreamYard went to a dark mode, which has made streaming fantastic. But I'm not going to go all of the way down the rabbit hole. But for all of you who are like, okay, now I know where we've got those options. Now you know where we have those options. Let's talk about Teskey. As to the first Brady element, the court finds that the state did not suppress the Teskey supplied ammunition vis-a-vis defendant Gutierrez. I said that too. Rather, Teskey and the ammunition in his possession were available to defendant. Defendant opted not to call Teskey as a witness or seek to introduce it at trial. Let's see. Counsel for Ms. Gutierrez Reed knew that Teskey had some rounds from the same batch and is not making that failure of disclosure the sole basis for this motion. So she's quoting Bowles' words back to him. Is not making that failure of disclosure the sole basis for this motion, except to the extent they show ongoing misconduct of the state and failures found by the court, although counsel for Ms. Reed was also never provided a copy of the police report and lapel video concerning those rounds. During the September 26, 2024 motion hearing, Bowles stated, now I was not able to see those rounds until the second to last day of trial. That was the first time I saw them. I directed Troy Teskey to turn those into the sheriff, which he did because we wanted law enforcement to have them. But you saw them before the trial ended and did not bring it to the court's attention, did not make a motion for mistrial, then on. So you had them, and you having them is what matters here. Further, it says the court rejects defendant's arguments that the state constructively suppressed the Teskey supplied ammo vis-a-vis defendant Gutierrez when the special prosecutor during a November 2nd, 2023 pretrial interview that Mr. Teskey asked Mr. Teskey retain the ammo for later law enforcement collection. Rather, the ammo was available to defendant Gutierrez counsel in advance of and during trial. B, the special prosecutor informed defendant Gutierrez counsel that she had decided not to have them tested or picked up via email on January 8th. C, the ammunition was not in the custody of the state until March 6th, when defendant Gutierrez counsel apparently instructed Teskey to turn it into Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office. Now, there's a lot of room to have a conversation about how, what, when, and why Baldwin knew about this. This was critical to Baldwin because they never turned it over to Baldwin. Baldwin's lawyers weren't a part of any of this. That's a boon for Baldwin. It was completely avoidable if Erlinda had known about this or if Carrie had turned it over. None of this becomes an issue if they tell Baldwin. If they tell Baldwin, his trial goes ahead as normal. You know what they did? They didn't. So that's on them. Further, it says the supplemental report and lapel video recording concerning the March 6th collection of the ammo could not have been suppressed by the state before or during defendant's trial because those items were not created until after March 6th. This happened after closing arguments. To the extent, I rocked the mic like a vandal. No, to the extent that the state failed to disclose these items after their creation and after defendant's trial, the court finds that defendant cannot establish that the supplemental report and lapel video recording considered alone are material as developed in greater detail below. And now the court's going to tell you why it doesn't matter. Assuming without deciding that the second Brady element is satisfied. So again, arguendo. Arguendo is the, hey, we are going to assume for the fact of argument so I can illustrate the point. But that is it. Anne said, you're so unserious. Yes, it is literally a central point of how I cover everything. It is exactly what we embrace here because A, the law is too serious, and B, I find it when people cover it too seriously. Like, we can take serious shit seriously, but also I hate it when lawyers just preach at people like they should know. Absolutely hate it. We like to break it down so everybody can know and have a giggle, which is why we're here. So yes, thank you for acknowledging it, Anne. I feel seen. Bowles is trying to be serious and is ending up unserious by accident. Ooh, I'm going to cough. Give me 30 seconds, y'all. Hold on. We need some music because my voice is just like, we're going to cough. Okay. Y'all, hopefully you wiggled. My brain was just like, stop. And then my throat was like, also stop. Okay. Delight. Change of seasons are so much fun. Let us finish this up. But also, we're definitely not coughing in the microphone. We can avoid it because, ew. I know that even drinking water sometimes is too loud. I try not to. But also, I cannot survive without hydrating while we talk on the internet for a living. All right. The court said, assuming without deciding, so arguendo, that the second Brady element is satisfied, i.e., the Teskey supplied ammunition supplemental report and lapel video recording are favorable evidence either as impeachment or evidence, either as impeachment evidence or exculpatory evidence, too many E's. And the court finds that the third Brady element is not satisfied. So the court said, assuming the second element is met, we're getting through the third element. I really love the way this court writes, and I find it incredibly helpful. This is the way I always tried to write when I had to. Emily, did you avoid written arguments as much as you could? Yes. Oral arguments for everything, but also it's why I didn't want to work in the U.S. Attorney's Office. I worked as a law clerk in the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm like, you do everything in writing? No. It's also why being a research attorney was not within my gift set. Everything was writing. I was like, I want to talk. Where's the law job where I just get to talk? I found the extreme version of it. We're here. All right. Specifically, the Teskey supplied ammunition does not qualify as a matter of law as material evidence because it was either available to the defendant in advance of and during the trial. Quote, evidence is material under Brady only if there is a reasonable probability that had the evidence been disclosed to the defense, the result of the proceeding would have been different. You knew. Further, defendant does not sufficiently explain how the supplemental report and lapel video recording considered alone carry a reasonable probability of altering the result of the defendant's jury trial. He didn't do that at all. Bowles's argument was, but Carrie bad. We know that. We know that Carrie did all kinds of shit. We know more now. But that's not enough. It's not enough to just say, yeah, but Carrie did this. Okay. But how does it change your case? But Baldwin got a dismissal. Different circumstance, Bowles. But Baldwin got a dismissal is not enough. And this judge does not like Carrie Morrissey. It's clear to me at this point, the judge has had just an eyeful with Carrie's nonsense, but is able to professionally say, these are the arguments by the government, these are the arguments by the defense, and your arguments do not meet your elements. You cannot get lost in, but the prosecutor did this. You still have to make your argument because, yeah, the prosecutor did do that. And yeah, the court's already mad about it. But that's not legally sufficient grounds. It's like, you might win that argument on Twitter, but Twitter's not court. And this judge stood her ground and said, but the law, though, which I appreciate. A reasonable probability is a probability sufficient to undermine confidence in the outcome. The court goes on to say, rather, the supplemental report and lapel video recording are significant primarily because those items document Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office collection of the ammo. Critically, defendant Gutierrez's counsel had access to that ammunition in advance of and during trial. Right. Exactly. Footnote 3. Order granting defendant Alec Baldwin's expedited motion for dismissal and sanctions under Brady, Giglio, and Rule 5-501. Filed July 31st, 2024, in State versus Baldwin. New Mexico First Judicial District case cause Baldwin. They gave the number. Finding that the suppressed evidence is material because defendant Baldwin was not in a position to forensically analyze or ask the state to forensically analyze the Tuskegee supplied ammunition as the state had done with other units of ammunition relevant to the arrest investigation, and agreeing with defendant Baldwin that had defendant Baldwin had access to the Tuskegee supplied ammunition before the third day of jury trial, defendant Baldwin would have altered his approach to preparation for trial and the trial itself. See, different. The court is like, see, it's different. It's different. You're not the same. I was about to make a joke and ask my permanent listening device to play Not Like Us, but I don't want to get copyright struck for playing music. Play it in your head. Just roll it. Just roll Kendrick in your head. Not the same. All right. Now that we've done that fulsome footnote of the court, again, reminding that also I think is shade towards Bowles. It's reminding Bowles why they're different. It doesn't matter how much Bowles wants to be Baldwin's legal team. Not the same. You're not the same. The positions aren't the same. The information's not the same. The arguments aren't the same. You're not in the same position. And the court is reminding Bowles again, or Gutierrez again, that it is not the same position. Therefore, defendant Gutierrez has failed to establish that the state's action in relation to the Tuskegee supplied ammo and related materials constitutes a Brady violation. As to Baldwin, Brady violation. As to Gutierrez, no Brady violation. Like we said from the beginning. Similarly, with respect to the Geppetto, something, requirements pertinent to Rule 5-614, the court finds under the reasoning set forth above, the defendant has failed to establish that the ammunition, A, had been discovered since trial. You knew about it. B, could have been discovered before the trial by the exercise of due diligence. You knew. And C, is material as a matter of law. In addition, defendant has failed to establish that the supplemental report and lapel video alone, A, will probably change the result if a new trial is granted. Bowles didn't argue it at all. Didn't argue it at all. B is material. C is not merely impeaching or contradictory. Therefore, assuming arguendo the other requirements, those requirements aren't met. With respect to defendant's arguments contending that the state erred in failing to collect the Tuskegee rounds, the court concludes that rare is both inapplicable. That's the case law about the police not gathering information. They said that where is not applicable to this case, and even if applied, does not support a new trial. The court says where, which is the case law they are citing, applies to determine whether the state should be sanctioned for failure to gather evidence from a crime scene. Here, defendant does not argue that the Tuskegee supplied ammunition was ever present at the crime scene. Thus, it's not applicable. It's not the same. The investigator, police, law enforcement going to a crime scene and being like, oh, we're just not going to pick that up, can have huge impact to a defendant. But that is not the case here. These were had by a third party. And as much as I dislike the way Carrie Morrissey has prosecuted this case and handled, the basic tenets of being a prosecutor, her argument about the Teskey rounds as to Hannah makes sense for me. Bowles knew about it. They saw the photos of the rounds and they weren't the same. And Bowles saw the difference in the rounds. I think if Carrie had, I am pretty confident, if Carrie had turned those over to Baldwin, we would have been in a much different position in the Baldwin case, even though there were other discovery violations. That was the final straw for the court. And there was room to have a very big question to Teskey if he testified, hey, you said this was the only ammo you had. Here's the only ammo you had in January. Why do you now have ammo that looks exactly like the ammo from the case after you've had opportunity to see the ammo from the case? Isn't that a bit sus? There would have been that was my internet, not yours. And I don't know why, but Tennessee. There would have been a very thorough cross-examination of Teskey if he ever testified. And those questions would have been raised, and those questions are valid. The reason those questions weren't raised and didn't get to be evaluated is because the state played hide the ball, which you can't do. And it put Baldwin at such a disadvantage that the court said, this is the end, we have to dismiss it. And so had we gotten to it in the Baldwin trial, it probably wouldn't have been as impactful. But not turning it over is what was impactful. So the court said, furthermore, even if where applied for the same reasoning above, defendant cannot establish that the Teskey ammo is material to her defense, given that the ammunition was available to her through her own witness at the time of trial. Exactly. And then the court said, holding that evidence as material only if there's a reasonable probability that had the evidence been available to defense, the result would have been different. It was available to defense. Conclusion, it is therefore ordered that defendants expedite a motion for new trial or for dismissal for discovery violations under the court's inherent power is denied. Wait. Denied. Should we just take a look real quick? Just a real quick peek at the motion for release, because it's kind of moot at this point, but should we just zoom through it real quick? I feel like for the sake of being done, we should just take a look real quick at the dismissal, not the dismissal, at the release from detention. So let's take a look. And I agree with the court's ruling. It still does not sit well with me that Hannah's the only one sitting in custody in all of this when so many are responsible. It does sit it does not sit easy with me that is the result. But some of that is indeed Hannah's choice. And some of that is because of the prosecutor's fuckery. So let's zoom into Hannah's motion for immediate dismissal. Because why not? Why not? Just finish looking at all of it. All of it. All right. Order denying defendant Hannah Gutierrez's motion for immediate release from detention. Procedural summary. We know. We just went through it. Let's see. In addition to the instant motion, defendant filed in the above captioned case a motion for release pending appeal on May 7th, notice of appeal on May 13th, expedited motion for new trial and dismissal. That appeal, by the way, is still rolling. So that appeal is still underway, but this was the motion for dismissal. And we haven't even seen the appeal papers. The notice of appeal was filed May 13th. I don't even think we've seen the initial briefing on this. On September 26th, the court entertained oral argument. The chat has reworded this to the court endured oral argument. I think that is perfection. After considering argument, the court reserved ruling on the motion. The court now enters its ruling. Overview of the authority. If a defendant is convicted of a non-capital offense other than a violent offense and is sentenced to a term of imprisonment not suspended in whole, he shall not be entitled to release pending appeal unless the court finds, 1, by clear and convincing evidence that the person is not likely to flee or pose a danger to the safety of any other person in the community if released, and 2, that the appeal is not for the purpose of delay and raises substantial question of law or fact likely to result in reversal or order for new trial. Further, interpreting Section 3111(1)(c), case law requires a defendant prove that a defendant prove and the court find defendant is not likely to flee or pose a danger, that the appeal is not for the purpose of delay, the appeal raises a substantial question of law or fact, and that if the substantial question is determined favorably to the defendant on appeal, the decision is likely to result in reversal or order for new trial. A substantial question in New Mexico is defined as a question of more substance than would be necessary to finding that it was not frivolous. That's not a definition. That is word salad. What's a substantial question? It's a question of substance. Stop it. Sometimes the courts, why do people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to law school? Because this is the kind of shit you have to try to parse to argue to a court someday. What is a substantial question? A question of more substance than would be necessary to find that it was not frivolous. And it not only is it word salad, but it's like in the negative, like it's not frivolous. I hate it. That's the court's definition. Thank you, judges, for that really illuminating definition of substantial. Let's go on to other case law. A close question, or one that very well could be decided the other way. Great. Substantial means it could be decided either way. Fantastic. Or a question that is either novel, has not been decided by controlling precedent, or fairly doubtful. Great. What is substantial? It means that we find it more than not frivolous. Perfect. It goes on to say whether a substantial question is likely to result in a reversal or order for new trial relates to the significance of the substantial issue to the ultimate disposition of the appeal. The thing with the court is that this is really kind of the courts know it when they see it in their jurisdiction. Is this a question that has not been raised in this jurisdiction before? Is this a question that needs to be delved into? I think when we're talking about like the Karen Reed case, there is an argument that the question of a jury saying after a case, look, we didn't know we could do a split verdict and we have a verdict. I think that raises into substantial question. That raises a question that the courts have not really addressed before, that's novel and could have significant impact in the outcome. But we're not dealing with Massachusetts at the moment. We're dealing with New Mexico, different law, different system. But it's one of those things where the courts look at it, they know whether it's substantial given the context of what their courts are used to determining. But we're still getting definitions of substantial. Let's see. The significance of the substantial issue to the ultimate disposition of the appeal. In its consideration, a court assumes that the substantial question would be decided in a defendant's favor. So the assumption goes to the defendant here. If it's a substantial question, then we look at whether or not the defendant wins. And if they do win, what will happen? So it's the arguendo, defendant wins all of this, like a motion to dismiss, take it in the light most favorable. If a defendant wins all of this, if it's substantial, does the appeal come out in their favor? And therefore, should they be released pending appeal instead of sitting in custody waiting for it? In its consideration, the court assumes that the substantial question would be decided in the defendant's favor on appeal. Then the court determines whether the issue is so integral to the merits of the conviction that the resolution in the defendant's favor would result in reversal or an order for the new trial of all counts on which imprisonment has been imposed. Here, there's only the one count. It kind of makes that easier. When defendants satisfy the conditions of Section 3111(1)(c), the plain language of the statute entitles them to release subject to the conditions of release imposed by the trial court. In addition, the rules under 5-402C provide in pertinent part after imposition of a judgment and sentence, the court on a motion of the defendant may establish conditions of release pending appeal. Yeah, we know they can. Analysis. The defendant didn't bring any of this up, by the way. The defendant's motion was like, hey, if she gets a new trial, please let her out. And the court's like, we're just doing this once and for all. We're just done. We're just done. We're just done. With respect to defendant's arguments concerning her request for release pending her motion for new trial, the court denies defendant's request as moot. Didn't I say that? By way of separate order, the court denies defendant's motion for new trial, thus her request for release on the basis of a pending new trial is moot. With respect to defendant's arguments concerning her request for release pending appeal, the court finds the defendant has not established by clear and convincing evidence that the defendant is not likely to flee or pose a danger of safety to any other person or the community if released. Defendant has been convicted of a felony involving a firearm resulting in the death of Ms. Hutchins. At sentencing, this court found this felonious offense occurred in a physically violent manner, and the defendant allowed a fatal gunshot to occur that was done with recklessness in the face of knowledge that the defendant's acts were reasonably likely to result in serious harm. The court may also consider the fact that the defendant's conviction and the length of the sentence imposed. It goes on to say, additionally, the defendant is facing a separate pending felony firearm charge concerning unlawful carrying of a firearm into a licensed liquor establishment. That plea is coming up this month. Defendant has not satisfied the first prong of the section. Defendant's mere argument that, and this again is like, look, man, you didn't spell it out, so you just saying words isn't what's going to happen. Defendant's mere argument that Ms. Gutierrez-Reed has no criminal history outside of this case, which concerns an alleged crime of recklessness. It's not alleged at this point. It's not alleged at this point. Like, alleged cuts off it has been convicted. She's been convicted and sentenced. So we've gone, like, this case is not about whether or not Hannah did her job. If you want to argue the propriety of whether or not involuntary manslaughter should be a criminal cause of action or a civil cause of action, there's a lot of room to have that conversation. And I think those conversations should always happen when you evaluate cases. At what point does something that is at its core accidental become so reckless when you can foresee that if you are reckless in that way, tragedy can happen? At what point does that breach out of civil liability into criminal liability? Fine. A conversation to have about the laws. Not all countries have involved cases. Not all jurisdictions in the US have an involuntary manslaughter law. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It just depends on where you are. But that's not here, and this is not alleged. She has been convicted by a jury. So, going on. Defendant's mere argument, which really means that he gave nothing except just saying words. Defendant's mere argument that Ms. Gutierrez-Reed has no criminal history outside this case, which concerns an alleged crime of recklessness, and has been cooperative and compliant throughout, minimizes the seriousness of the crime of which defendant has been convicted, and further does not serve as evidence to satisfy Section 3111(1). She's not taking it seriously enough. And Bowles, she's saying, Bowles, you're not taking it seriously enough. Let's see. Footnote 1 goes to the other case that she's pending sentencing on. That sentencing will be, I believe, later this month. Footnote 1 is, during the September 26, 2024 motion hearing, the state represented the defendant had signed a plea agreement in relation to that case. However, the state does not share the terms of the plea agreement with this court. They did not. And it hasn't been sentenced yet. Let me check the date on that real quick, actually. Let's see. Hannah's scheduled plea hearing is October 7th at 1:30. So that is when she is scheduled to enter her plea, and we'll find out sentencing. So what is that, Monday? I think that's Monday. Sounds like Monday. Let us continue. It goes on to say, because defendant has not satisfied Section 3111(1)(c)(1) or the first prong established by State v. Taylor, the court does not analyze the remaining prongs. The motion is not well taken. The court doesn't say this on all motions, has said this to Carrie. The motion is not well taken and should be denied. It's therefore ordered that the motion for immediate release be denied. And that is all the lawyers, Bowles' law firm, and Carrie. Jason Lewis's name is still on this, even though he's been removed from the case, which is interesting, but he is not still on the case. So that is all of the updates pending in the Gutierrez case. The second that she is sentenced on that other pending case, this still won't be closed. Let's do a quick summary of all of those motions, because we're not done here, and that's for sure. Though Hannah Gutierrez has been convicted and sentenced, though her motion for new trial has been denied, her motion for release has been denied, and she is going to be sentenced October 7th on her other charge of carrying a firearm into a liquor establishment, which happened during the filming of Rust, but before the fatal shooting of Helena Hutchins on October 21st on the set of Rust. This case is still not done. Why? Bowles has filed a notice of appeal. That appeal has not been filed yet. So now that we're done with the new trial motion and the new trial motion and dismissal has been denied, Bowles can choose to either appeal that ruling on the new trial motion, which I don't think would be well taken because the standard for the court is quite high to review that, or Bowles can choose to go on with the rest of his appeal, which is your more typical appeal that, hey, in trial, the court ruled this and they shouldn't, and this was allowed in and it shouldn't be. So there's a full appeal motion that's been noticed and we'll be waiting. So will this case go up on appeal? Yes. Will Bowles choose to appeal the denial of the motion for new trial? He might, and that means there will be two motions going forward, both the appeal of the trial and then the appeal of the denial of the motion for new trial. So you could end up with two, you could end up with one. We'll see what Bowles chooses to do going forward, but this case is not done. Though Hannah was sentenced to 18 months, and by the time the appeal is decided, will probably be done serving her time in custody. I imagine that Hannah will also have to do some probationary time after she is released from custody on her agreed upon plea deal on the carrying a firearm into a licensed liquor establishment. So that is what we are going to be looking for in this case, but we are not done with the Rust matters. Remember, as to Baldwin's case, the matter of, I was going to say Hannah, and that is not right. The matter of Carrie Morrissey, the prosecutor, asking the court to reconsider the dismissal, even though no law was cited, is still pending. And we have seen a scathing response from Baldwin's lawyers, but the court has not set a date for hearing and has not ruled on that and has not just thrown out Carrie's motion. So we are still waiting to see what happens on the motion for reconsideration in the Baldwin case. And on a very personal level, I think the court has all of the room to throw the motion out as it has no legal standing or grounds. I really want it to go to oral argument, just selfishly. I want to see that oral argument. I want to see Spyro and Carrie Morrissey hash it out one more time. I'm fascinated. Will that happen? I don't know. Will the court entertain oral argument for these attorneys? Possibly. Does the court have to? No, they don't. So that's what's still going on in Rust. Plus, there is still a fleet of civil lawsuits that are underway. So we are definitely not done with Rust, but it should slow down in what's being filed to the point that we are checking in less frequently on this case because the litigation is going to move more slowly. And I imagine now that the criminal cases are resolved, we will start seeing some more movement in the civil cases. Most of those are going to go through involved in all of this and not so much dealing with the individuals, Baldwin, Gutierrez, and what have you. It's going to deal a lot with the insurance company for Baldwin's production company and what have you. So I will be keeping an eye on those and keeping you up to date on those, not just here streaming, but also on QuickBits, because that's the place to check in on those cases now more frequently. Some of you may have noticed that if you listen to QuickBits, either on the audio feed or over on my QuickBits channel, that the Monday QuickBits podcast has really changed to what we used to do QuickBits for here. Let me know if that's helpful to you. We used to do QuickBits here at the beginning of each episode, and then I would run out of time to deep dive and we'd stream for like 4.5 hours and I'd be like, shit, I don't have time to prep other things and do more QuickBits. So all of those case updates and those shorter case updates have been moving into the Monday episode of QuickBits, where instead of just summarizing what we've covered in the week, there's some of that too, but there's also these are the fast things you need to know happening in the cases I'm covering, and these are the things happening in cases that I'm not covering more in depth, like the lawsuit against Mr. Beast that was in QuickBits last week. A lot of you have asked me about whether or not I will cover the sheriff shooting a judge in Chambers. That is the kind of stuff that before we get into deep dives, I will be keeping up with on Quick Bits. A lot of you are saying you like the new Quick Bits format. I do too. And it's my intent. You guys, there's just a few of us here. Shh. This is an announcement that I'm supposed to make next month. We're just going to talk about it real quick. As we're going forward into next year, I will be adding in more live streams so we can have more, we can chat more. And then the Quick Bits will be staying on the Quick Bits pod on Monday, but we will be adding in some more live streams in the week as we go forward. So that is what's going to be happening, which lets us use Quick Bits as a way to keep in the loop and lets us use the live streams as a way to deep dive, and then allows us to have more live streams in the week. So shh. We're going to announce that more. We're going to announce that more in November. So don't worry. But we're going to be adding in more streams. Why? Because I want to chat with chat. So Monday will be our time to release Quick Bits and keep up to date. And then we'll have more time during the week to stream. So that is what I'm hoping, because as we get into 2025, our trial schedule is already pretty full. So it's making sure that we can keep up with trial and I don't end up exhausted and you don't end up exhausted. Covering live trials, I love it. It is exhausting and it takes me out of other things that I'm doing both personally and here. So having Quick Bits as a place to do that is going to be great. Kimberly, I will be keeping you guys in the loop about what we're doing with that in the member spaces. So Kimberly asked about BTS podcast. We're going to be shifting when we BTS, but not now. Do not worry. Do not worry. We will be shifting it, but do not worry. There will be some new updates for all of you in the member spaces, but don't worry. Those are coming. I can't do all the announcements. I'll get you that. Also, some of that is still in flux, and I'm not going to tell you something and then change it. We don't tell you things until they're like decided. But for those of you that stay to the end, you get the tea, which is Quick Bits. For those of you that aren't on the Quick Bits channel, there is a Quick Bits channel on YouTube, but there's also an audio feed. And we've been adding in the clip downs of the case summaries onto the audio feed too. So if you are interested in those when you don't have time to do all of the streams, those are on Quick Bits and those are on the cut downs as well. And so those are on audio. Those are also on the Quick Bits channel. And the Quick Bits channel is linked everywhere in the mods. We can put a link in it. If you have not subscribed to that channel, Quick Bits channel. So we need to get to Q&A because we have not gotten to Q&A today. And I've seen lots of Qs. So let us get to questions real quick. Questions. Okay, chat. I've been saving questions as we've been going. Ask your questions here. I know a number of you have asked if we can see the nails. The nails have been up in the app and they are not as cute as they were, but the nails are, I went to, and members, we're going to be talking about this more in members only this month. Oh my God, the fuzziness from the cats. I went to a rhinestone rodeo event when I was at the YouTube Creator Summit. And the Rhinestone Rodeo event involved, rhinestones and roller skating. I did not roller skate. Not even a chance. But my orthopedic surgeon would have been like, girl, we fused your spine and we've fixed your ACL multiple times. Also your shoulders. Like, what part of your body did you think you would not injure on wheels? No, boo. We're not doing that. So I brought my rhinestones out. I wore a rhinestone cowboy shirt. I wore a rhinestone hat. And so the nails got rhinestoned. However, since then, I have also been to Pilgrimage Festival. I've also packed like 4 times and some of the rhinestones have pulled off. So the nails look cute from far away, but up close, some of the rhinestones are gone. Some of the rhinestones are there, but the nails are getting redone. So they are, in life, there are 3D gel on the top of the nails. Then there is chrome, then there is purple, then there is rhinestones. It's all the things. So though I would love to roller skate, I know that I will hurt myself. So we're keeping the nails back here. And it was a really interesting and fun event. Let's see. We'll talk about it more, as I said, in the members only. We'll do a full deep dive of the who, what, where, when, behind the scenes of all of it. But before we get to the who, what, where, why, and behind the scenes of all of it, I am going to share. Hold on. Why do I have to do this? Emily, why can't you just share a picture? Okay, let me log into something real quick. And then I will show you. Why is that not coming through? Let's see. My husband also wants to chat with me about kid pickup, but that's fine. We'll do that in a minute. I'm trying to log into this and it just does not want to let me log in. Let's see. Let's do that. No, let's not do that. I am trying to log in to show you a picture, but there we go. But it is running slow and I am apparently logged out of everything. I swear it may be worth it. Hope so. All right. Let's try. Because we also had another evening where I was doing all of the things and there were two photographers. I did not know which photographer I was looking at. And that is not a delight for me to not know which photographer I'm looking at because it's always going to be the worst possible angle of Emily. But we're going to just embrace the fact that I have control over my angles here and otherwise I don't. But the CEO of YouTube posted this earlier today. So I'm going to go ahead and share it because why not? So this was, as we're talking about, let's chat real quick about Creator Summit. I didn't realize my nail conversation would lead us into chatting about Creator Summit, but here we are. So for those of you that heard me on the Vial Files, Nick and I did not meet this night. We met at the Rhinestone Rodeo, but Neil was there the first night, the CEO of YouTube, chatting with creators. I had a lovely chat with Neil. He asked me about covering law on YouTube and streaming and all of the things. We had a really lovely conversation. So with that, as you will see lots of creators. Poor Renee didn't know that he was going to be in this picture either. Renee, I adore you. Renee's like, I don't want to be in this picture. I'm trying to not be in this picture. But we were looking at a different photographer. It was not, we were looking at a different photographer. We were looking at a different photographer. This was not the photographer we were supposed to be looking at, except for Nick in blue, who was looking at the photographer. I was not. Anyway, Neil and I had a lovely conversation. This was at the end of a very windy night. Event photographers at the end of a windy night are not me living my best life, but whatever. I've just embraced it. Do I hate having other people take photos of me? Yes. Does it make me incredibly stressed? Yes. Yes, it does. Are we just embracing it? Yes, we are. Thank you, chat. I just want you to know it stresses me out. All the time it stresses me out. So just so you know, it stresses me out. Neil was lovely. Easy to talk to. It was very loud. Yes. And Matt Pat, who had the greatest jacket on. I was like, cold outside, hot inside, mess, but so much fun. The bar menu, I don't know if we can see this. The bar menu was all YouTube specific. So they had like a YouTube red drink and a bunch of other stuff. I have a picture of it somewhere. When we go through this with our members, we'll talk about it. But I don't think I liked this there. But yes, had a lovely night with Neil. Had a lovely night with all of the other creators that were there. We will talk about that more on members only, which is going to be bumped back a week because scheduling wise, next week is my kids' fall break. So what does that mean for next week? Well, we know that Sarah Boone is starting. All of you have been asking me about Sarah Boone. I am going to cover Sarah Boone, but I am not going to cover Sarah Boone until I am back from fall break. We are doing some college things. My son is a junior, and we don't have other time to do it. And B, my youngest recently has said to me a couple times, Mom, but you work too much. And I feel like we don't get to see you. So that is never the goal. So for both of my kids being off on fall break, we are going to go and look at some of the universities that my son is interested in. Our entire family needs to visualize. It's like, do we want to do this? So we are going to go take a look at some of the universities he's interested in. He also has band competitions not close to where we are. So we are traveling for band and then for kiddos. However, here is my hope for Sarah Boone. It is going to take them a couple days to pick a jury, and then we will zoom and catch up. So I will not be covering any of jury selection. It won't be aired. I imagine they're going to take, I don't know, 3-4 days for jury selection. So I imagine we might not see opening statements until Thursday, Friday. And when we get to opening statements, I will make sure that we cover them when I am back on Monday the 14th. So if Sarah Boone starts on time, which y'all, I still don't know. I still don't know that Sarah Boone's going to start on time. If Sarah Boone starts on time, I will be covering it starting Monday, October 14th, and we will get caught up. And then we will do trial days. So I will be looking at that, but we will zoom through some of it to get caught up into real time and fast forward. But the kiddos have fall break. For those of you asking, what is fall break? It is a week off. The kids have a week off, mid-semester break. And so we've got both kids out of school. And though summer is normally time for that, we've covered summer trials for the last couple of summers now. But I knew Boone might fall during this time period. Then again, trials don't always go. So there are times when I try to modify trial schedules and life schedules around trial. There are times that I can't. So this fall break is just falling at the beginning of October, and we have things that we need to do. So I will be back. You will have content. There will be quick bits. There will be a podcast. I will not be streaming, but there will be new Emily content. The members only will get bumped to the following week. I will put all of that in the member spaces in the app. However, Boone, I will start covering on the 14th. So if you guys want to watch along whenever opening statements start, if they start, feel free. You know, we're going to go no spoilers in the chat. But if you want to wait, that's fine too. I will be covering it starting the 14th. That's what we're doing. And then over Thanksgiving break, our kids don't get as much time off, but we do have family plans, and the kiddos have definitely expressed that they would like to spend some time. So we are going to have some family time for the week. I will be in the app a little bit, but I will not be online much because we're going to be in the car a lot looking at universities. Don't worry, members, I will tell you all about it when we get back. So that's where we are for next week. I do not have 10 out of 10 confidence that the Boone trial is going to start on time. The judge has not ruled yet on everything that happened. A couple of you are asking, didn't the kids just go back to school? No, they went back the first week of August. So, I mean, yes, and yes, and, but I, as a DA, we did not have a lot of option in our scheduling. So the ability to say we are taking a break this week when the kids are off, was not always an option that I had. So it is an option that I have right now, and we are going to do it. I, again, am not going to cancel our family plans for a trial that might not start on time. For those of you asking about my cup, it is just the Stanley Midnight whatever. I customized it. No, these are not merch. Yes, we do have merch. I need to wash my cups because I just got back from traveling and haven't washed anything. So it was just I made this. If you guys are interested in cups this big, let me know. We have a bunch of new merch coming. I will find a way to get us something Lawnardy that is this large if you want it. But I've been looking at bigger water bottles. So let me know. We are, I'm going to answer some other questions, but that is what I am looking at going forward into the next week and making sure that we do cover Boone. We have popped in mid-trial with a lot of things. And I've really enjoyed it. We popped in mid-trial for Daryl Brooks. We popped in mid-trial for Shabusiness. But I will cover the key parts of witnesses and opening statements till we get caught up. That's the plan. And a lot of the evidence is going to be based on the video. For those of you that don't know the Sarah Boone case, she's accused of killing her boyfriend or partner. He was zipped into a suitcase. There is video of her mocking him while he is begging for his life. It is a heartbreaking video. I personally do not want to watch it 7,000 times. So we will be able to zoom through some of that maybe once, because the audio will come up in opening and then zoom past it and just cover what the prosecution says the case is. The most impactful part of the Boone case, this is not a who did it. This is a, is she culpable for doing it? And she is going to testify. She has not said that. She is going to testify. She testified yesterday in her hearing. She is trying to say she was intoxicated. She is confused. That video is heartbreaking. But we will see what she decides. If the judge denies her pending motion for her statements to be thrown out, it might throw a wrench into her proposed defense. She has new defense attorneys. She has gone through like 9 public defenders. These are private attorneys that seem to step up and say, you need a defense attorney. We're here. She testified at her hearing on Monday. So we will be covering it, but we will have a little time to zoom past things. We are not going to watch the video ad nauseum. It is, it's heartbreaking and it's awful and chilling, and it's going to be hard for the victim's family. So that gives us a little bit of leeway before we get into the defense case, which I think will be the less known part of the case. The prosecution's case is going to be police showed up. This is the video that was found on her phone. This is what the autopsy says. That. The defense case is going to be a lot of Sarah Boone, probably on the stand for at least a day or more, trying to explain-ish. So the defense case is really what I'm the most interested in. But the opening statements will go through. So that's how I'm planning on covering it. There will probably be 3 days at least of jury selection. And then we'll get into it with as much of a summary as we need on the 14th. But again, I'll keep you in the loop in the app on how I'm going to cover it. It seems that when we've covered things slightly on delay, it has always worked for us. I am most interested, again, in the defense part of this trial. This trial, I was very interested in to see if she was going to represent herself, how that was going to go. I'm also interested to see if she just fires her attorney in the middle of trial or something. Like, this is one that can get wild. So we will see. We will see what happens. Crystal, yes, I know that Lawyer is covering your hair, by the way. Hair and glasses, fab. I'm totally biased towards the purple hair glasses look, though, Crystal, but fab. The defense is going to try to bring a battered spouse defense, it seems, but they need her statements from the police to be yeeted. And I don't know if those statements are going to be yeeted. So that is the ruling they are waiting on today. The court took it under submission yesterday. But Lawyer has been covering it. He's in Florida, so I imagine he'll be in the courtroom for some of it. I'm sure there will be others covering it on the platform. So I'm just letting you know how I'm going to cover it. We will see what the defense does or does not do, and if it is well taken, and go from there. That is my plan. But I am going to be delayed a couple of days because I am going to fall break with my kiddos and see what marching band my kiddo is interested in, because these are large life decisions and it is terrifying. First, Emily could use a little bit of a break. Emily's a bit tired. Some of that is my own doing but I have to also I am covering trial, Karen Reed, and I'm going to go to VidCon where I'm speaking, and I'm going to go to all the Dave shows and. So Emily's been working quite a lot and can use a few days with the kiddos just of not having to do the working things. Second of all, it always, having time for my brain to rest always, I think, makes me better at what I do. Plus, having a little bit of road trippiness with the kids is always really fun. And we're going to get a big juxtaposition of music on this trip, because my oldest is like Slipknot, Linkin Park, and my youngest is like, sure, but Weird Al. So it's going to be interesting doing all the things. Twin mom, I completely understand. There is a lot of interest from the law nerds with regard to Sarah Boone. I think some of that interest might have waned when she was no longer representing herself, but I am interested in the case the defense brings. So, as I said, we can zoom through some of the prosecution's case on summary and then see what the defense has to say. Also, I am in complete emotional denial that my oldest is a junior in high school, and we are really trying to decide where he's going to go to school. Like, that's a weird thing. Like, it is a weird thing to me. I don't need to explain to you. It is kind of surreal, but we're going to figure it out. And I will share in the app what the road trip diary is. I love a road trip. Look, Emily loves a road trip. Loves it. I very much like to drive. Though my teen is going to be driving some of this road trip too, so there is that. But I very much enjoy driving. Not everybody loves driving as much. I don't know if this is a born in California thing. This is a neurospicy thing, whatever. It is meditative. So I don't mind a road trip at all. And we're going to go see band competition and all the rest of it. I'm going to get to some more questions, but that's where we're at for Sarah Boone. That's how I'm going to be covering it. It will be good. Also, we're going to get to the eastern side of our state, which has been decimated. So we were going to also see if there's anything we need to bring to friends. I have some friends in North Carolina that have just been absolutely decimated in their counties with still no power, no internet. It is a really hard thing to see the hurricane damage to places that don't get hurricane damage. And are so cut off. It's tough, but we will be out to the eastern end of the state, and I'll be sharing in our spaces. My friends have been vetting some of the charities that are helping for recovery towards not just Eastern Tennessee, North Carolina, and others. So I'll be sharing those in links. If you were looking for places that have been vetted, I have not shared them yet because I don't share things until I look at what I am sharing and what they are and what the charities are. And what have you. Ryan Hall is absolutely amazing. Not only covers weather, but his 501c3 does a ton of good. I'll be sharing him in the link because donating to Ryan Hall is something I always trust. They do an incredible job of finding where the need is immediately. And they are a 501c3. So if you want to donate and make sure that you have it, then you can. So we're going to be doing a lot of that. I know Peter is doing contributions as well. So I'm going to pull all those together and share them. I just had not had the ability to do so yet because, again, I move slowly. I like to vet things first, and it's been really, really devastating. But this is something incredible anyway. Said I've been so impressed with the Y'all Squad. It's something they're incredibly well set up to do because they've been doing it for tornadoes. So they understand the terrain. When you're dealing with hurricanes, a lot of hurricane damage is not in the type of terrain that we're seeing it in. That's more tornado type terrain. So I'm not surprised that Ryan Hall Y'all and the Y'all Squad is like, we know how to help. And a lot of that is getting in ATVs, getting in vehicles, including horses and other animals that can bring stuff in when so much infrastructure is damaged. So let us continue on with questions, and I will be sharing those things. But it's, again, very, very difficult. Cheryl said insulin was being delivered by horse. Again, glad they are in areas where horses can get stuff in, because you definitely see people pulling together. Tennessee doesn't joke about being the volunteer state, but you definitely see people pulling together in that way. And then in North Carolina as well. And you guys know that I always love working with Community Resource Center because, like Ryan Hall, y'all, they are incredibly agile to need where need is most needed, or getting resources to where need is most needed. Elizabeth said, me and my girl see Korn next week. Enjoy the kids. Absolutely will do. I saw Korn. I have not seen Korn in forever, but when I bought tickets for Metallica, I was so thrilled to see that Limp Bizkit, in my brain they're connected, that Limp Bizkit was connected to some of that too. as opening acts. So, but corn is so fun live. All right. Can we get dishwasher safe big cups? We try not to do anything that is not dishwasher safe. So when we did the sparkly cups, it can really damage the finish on them. But yes, we can. Is there any way you can ask YouTube to please stop the ridiculous political commercials that use language? Mike, I have not seen any of those, but yes. I don't know what I would be asking because I haven't seen it. Partly because I have YouTube Premium, so I do not see ads. I have no idea what ads are being run on the platform, but I think channels can opt out. This actually reminds me to double check because I think my channel is opted out of political ads, but I will double check and make sure that it is. So it is, it's one of those things that is really frustrating if advertisers can do things that creators can't. Very, very frustrating, but I have not seen that. Also, the section of Google that deals with advertisements are separate. And that's also hard because some of those ads are purchased through Google, not through YouTube, but they're also placed on YouTube, if that makes sense. So I will absolutely go look, but I'm pretty sure that they are turned off on my channel. I don't know what DuckGate is, AJ. So I'm sorry, I do not know what that is. Is it a new Law Nerd jug? No, it was just a personalized Stanley, but we are working on new merch. I just got samples for new merch. I'm so excited. Nishay, does Griffin know that Weird Al is going on tour? Yes. And my lovely child, with all of his sensory quirks, rarely wants to go see like a movie in the movie theater or what have you. But he's like, bring the headphones, let's go see Weird Al. And I'm like, yes, I can't wait. Motion for more wiggle breaks during streams, especially if Carrie's name is mentioned. We do take stretch breaks during trial, but I will keep it in the loop. You guys are saying DuckGate is related to Karen Reed. I'll take a look. I don't know. When I say that I have been absolutely kind of out of the loop from traveling to New York for Creator Summit, which was very high energy. For me, it was very much a lot of peopling in person, which I love, but I also find it draining, but I love. So I didn't really have time to appropriately introvert afterwards to recharge because I got back from Creator Summit, streamed, and the executive team came into town and we went to concerts. We saw some of the Law Nerds in the mud and then had like a very intensive 2 days of team planning. So it has been a lot of energy out, not a lot of energy back in. So one of the ways I try to regulate myself when it is energy out versus energy back in is not intaking social. So when you guys are like, I haven't seen Emily on Instagram, like commenting, liking, sharing stories, it's because one of the ways I try to recharge when I don't have time to actually recharge is not socialing. It's just like, that is the first thing that it's like, whoop, we need to recharge energy. Not socialing is absolutely the first thing that goes. So, but I will take a look and thank you guys for letting me know what it is. So I will take a look. This has nothing to do with like Jeep Cherokees. Cause whenever I think of ducks now, I think of like Jeep, the cars. So yes, I find the greatest way to preserve my energy when I don't have a lot of options is to not social. Oh my God, we have the same watch face. Yay. I love this, the Pride watch face. I have a couple others that I use. I started using like a stress app for my watch. I'll let you guys know if you're interested in what I'm using on the app in our members spaces. Just Gary said hi from South Africa to Law Nerds from the Semi Replay crew. It's like midway through. Good to see you. Let's see. Mike said more streams, best news ever. I love my time with the Law Nerds. Me too. And one of the things I wanted to make sure as we were going into like, what do I want as we're going into the next year? I was like, more opportunities to chat with chat. That was one of the big things that I wanted to find a way to bring in more live streams, and not just when we're in trial, but what does it look like when we're in trial? What does it look like when we are not in trial? And how do we have more interactive streams when we're not in trial? So Janet said, I wonder what next trial. Well, it may be Boone. It may not be Boone. It just depends. So let's see. Kiston said, I listen to Emily the most because she discusses her brain process. Have neurospicy brain. She makes it more. Hopefully it helps understand. I learn through people sharing. I hope others learn through people sharing. And getting into I found that this works this way is a lot of push-pull in how I've learned things about myself. So I try to always share because you never know when that one thing is going to be like, wait, my brain does that too. How can I make it work best for me? I figure if I've spent 46 years trying to figure it out, I might as well share that with y'all. If we can, if anything that I have learned through the struggle or the happy accident in my life can be a shortcut for all of y'all, I am here for it all day, every day, because that's what we're here for. Like, humans learn through storytelling. It is how we learn. Don't make me get into the fact that we don't learn by sitting and necessarily reading things. We learn through discussion. We learn through interaction. We learn through each other's stories. We learn through each other's experiences. We are meant to learn from each other. It is why I like to talk with y'all in the chat. Nicholas said, thank you for being open with your brain process. I didn't realize why my brain jumps words in books and fills words in. Scotland isn't great with ADHD understanding. Thank you. You're welcome. And I wasn't always great. There are so many lovely resources. Like, there is a channel here on YouTube called How to ADHD that does a great job breaking things down. I just try to break it down in real time when it makes sense, hopefully. Ned said, will special prosecutor face sanctions? Not yet, but Baldwin did ask for attorney's fees on their last motion. And I think that's really, I think of all the things that one's probable. Like, there's been a lot of stuff in this case, but I think with Baldwin, that sanction is probable. All right, you guys, Judge Abby brought me a new lip gloss. We're going to try it. I haven't tried it while streaming yet, but Judge Abby brought me a new lippy while we were in Tennessee. So we're going to see. We're going to see how it streams. It smells delightful. Like, how does it stream? Harder to put on stream. But I very much like this delivery system, but we'll see. I'll keep you guys posted what I think. It is kind of a lip oil balm. Why is everything a lip oil at the moment? It just is. Ice Baby, good to see you. Missed my birthday with you Tuesday, but I know that you and all of the Law Nerd crew were with me in spirit. We were. Happy birthday. Jen, you're like, I'm still older than you. I mean, for a moment, don't worry. We'll catch up. Could Hannah argue for ineffective assistance of counsel at this point? Not really. These seem to be choices that Bowles has made. Also, just because Bowles didn't make some arguments doesn't mean there were arguments to be made. Some of the arguments Bowles didn't make are because there's really not much he can say. So that's a big part of it. Some of those things that the judge pointed out that Bowles didn't argue are just things that can't really be argued. Irish Aiden, thank you so much. Thank you for the 20 memberships. I appreciate it. Let's see. Nishay said, I don't like the jump scare when you seem to suddenly be talking mid-sentence at the beginning of the video. Why is that a thing? There is differentiation between how things come on to YouTube and the time it takes for everybody's individual YouTube to refresh when I go live. So if you go and look at it in replay, there isn't a delay, but when you see it live, it takes sometimes a minute for YouTube to populate, is my best understanding. We are working on how to accommodate that better on live. I've actually asked the live team for some options with that, but the only other option would be to play a countdown, which I don't love playing a countdown, because then the replay crew is like, I don't sit here for 30 freaking. So that is part of why that works this way, but we are working on what some intermediary might be there, because that is needed. I agree. Melissa said, I'm so tired of Murdaugh, but I love it here. I know, when I joke about the fact that I take on cases that I'm willing to talk about for the next 4 years, it's because we have to be willing to talk about it for the next 4 years. Mia asked, there may be something already because Diddy is in jail. Not with the new filings just aren't filed. I mean, he's in jail on the indictment and there's nothing new in that indictment, but he is in jail on that indictment. That has not been updated yet, but he's appealing it and we'll cover it. So, I think it is Lay Queen, listening with my new first hearing aids today. Yay. No longer need 100% volume headphones. Love you, Leonards. Congratulations. And I'm so glad hearing is necessary and important, and not having the 100% might be really, really pleasant. Congratulations. Hush said, full honesty, Emily, I'm incapable of seeing a picture of you without sparkling with joy at the sight of you. Well, thank you. So I don't even notice anything else about how you look. Hush Piper, I very much appreciate that. The only reason I share is because A, it's how I feel, and B, I think a lot of people probably feel the same way. Like when I see a picture of me, there's times I'm like, why? And y'all are like, girl, you look like you're having fun. But I also think that that's a pretty normal situation for all of us. It's like, I don't love the other pictures taken, but it used to stop me from doing things. It doesn't stop me from doing things now. And I like to share that because it's a win for me. 28 months, Lori Leanne. Good to see you. And you guys, I appreciate all the support. It's why I tell you and maybe over explain how and when I choose to do things, because I think it is important. Let's see. Love that you explain how your brain functions. You're welcome. EDB Candid has helped me understand my AUDHD. I hope so. Fancy RPG. Again, so many of us are of the generation where we weren't considered in diagnoses, where we weren't discussed, where for a lot of us, we weren't studied. It is important to discuss. So many got diagnosed later in life, or not at all, because they were just told, like, when's your next period? Because hyperactivity can display differently in different humans, it is difficult. And depending on when you were born, you weren't getting considered the same way. And if you weren't traditionally disruptive, you weren't getting considered at all. If the disruption being done in ADHD was to yourself, people didn't really consider that a problem. They just thought you were hormonal or anxious or whatever. But a lot of ADHD can manifest in internal hyperactivity, not external hyperactivity. And so a lot of us are still navigating what that means and what it means for us, what it means for those in our life, and also how to navigate it together. And I think talking about it helps. And at least if you talk about it and share and people are like, I don't get that, that doesn't make sense, then you can choose how much you want to endeavor to help people understand, or just find your people. So it's hard, but a lot of us didn't get considered in all of this. And so hopefully that helps. And for those of you that are like, why do I feel like crying? Because it's frustrating, and because it shouldn't be a struggle, and because being put into a category where you're just like spacey, or you just need to focus, after a full lifetime of being told that over and over and over, you just start to internalize it. And it's really frustrating. And it brings with it a lot of trauma of trying to advocate for yourself and not being heard. And a lot of people discounting you when you say you needed help because you just weren't heard. It's frustrating. So it brings up a lot of childhood struggle and frustration. And then for some, there's a grieving process too of what could life have been different if I had known more. And that's frustrating too. And there is a sorrow to that. And there's a heaviness to that that sometimes I still work through, and sometimes still hits me sideways. Tracy said, you need to apply yourself more and try harder. Exactly. Yeah. It's frustrating. So that's one of the reasons I talk about it so much. So it is always helpful. And as more and more people get diagnosed at different places in life, there is more and more resources and conversation. And again, I think ADHD is going to get to a point where it is just hey, brains operate in this panoply of ways. And some people's brains are like this, and some people's brains are like that. And they're just different operating systems. And start normalizing the fact that they're just different operating systems, instead of there being this is what typical looks like and this is what not typical looks like. It's like, no. I think it's typical that there's different varieties. There's Mac, there's, Windows, there's Linux, there's Unix. I think it's normal that there are differences. So I hope that the language around that starts changing with like, oh, your brain is a this way and my brain is a that way. One's not normal and one's not normal. Just different. So anyway, just different. Again, I see sometimes more neurotypical brains as boring. It's like, why is your brain so boring? It's just doing like the one thing. Like, you need to speed up, especially when people who are non-ADHD is like, can you slow down? It's like, can you speed up? I'm not going too fast. You're going too slow. I'm just going to start flipping it on people. I need you to slow down. I need you to speed up. Can you stick to one train of thought? Why can't you get on multiple trains? Like, why can't you process more information? I need you to process information faster. Look, we could have discussed like the entirety of human history and the time it took you to process what I just said. Stop it. Which is also why we have a highly neurodivergent audience here, because sometimes people find it frustrating to keep up with me and opt out of the content. That is why there are many different content creators of all different ways. But it's like, can you just keep up? Anyway, the world would be boring without all of us. So it is too funny. Law nerds, with all of that, I adore you. Thank you for being here. We will be back together Monday for Quick Bits. We will be together Wednesday for a podcast. I'm going to do my best to be in the chat. I will probably be on mobile chat, but I'm going to do my best to be on the in the chat on Wednesday with you, because I think we can make that work. And I will not be streaming Tuesday, Thursday. I will be back Monday. I will be with the kiddos. I will let you guys know in the app all the things we're doing. In the Law Nerd Lounge, I will be sharing some of the updates on the phone stuff and how I've laid out the phone so we can chat about it. I love all the chat about how to make things more accessible for you, for me, for everybody. So we'll be doing that. You guys have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves. If you are in an area that is still recovering, please remember that all of the emotional and mental weight is going to need space. Of course, you are exhausted. It is hard. Give yourself the space to take care of yourself. If you have friends that need the care, absolutely give them the space and offer the just, I'm here if you want to cry. And I will be posting the resources that I have found. So everyone, just, if you're going to do a fingers up, if the Boone jury selection takes like a week and we just pick it up fresh Monday the 14th, I'm not mad about it. Let's just, everybody just hope for a long jury selection and then we'll just all hit it together. I think that's perfect. With that, Law Nerds, I will see you in the next one. You are the best, and I will see you soon. You can stay up to date with everything I'm covering and fast notifications on our free iOS and Android app at lawnerdapp.com, or search the App Store for Law Nerd. You can also follow me around social media, and don't forget to check out my podcast, The Emily Show, with quick bits dropping every Monday, summarizing everything I do here on the live streams on Tuesday and Thursday for when you just have time for the quick bits. Thanks for being a Law Nerd.